had been fostered in James' family for 5 years. And everyone took it for granted that James and I were a couple. After all, we had kissed and felt the warmth of each other's bodies. However, at the coming-of-age ceremony, James accepted the confession of the school beauty. Afterwards, someone asked him, "What about Ava?" James said casually, "I've had my fun with her. I think she's rather boring, being friends is enough. I have someone else in mind for a romantic relationship." I quietly changed my college application and applied to the University of Hong Kong, which was the farthest from being. When the admission notice from the University of Hong Kong was sent to the villa, James' mother saw it. When she signed for it, she asked me, "You clearly applied to universities in being with James, why is this admission notice from the University of Hong Kong?" I knew I couldn't hide it, so I had to confess to her. "Auntie, I changed my application because of James." "No," I twitched the corners of my mouth and said gently. "The University of Hong Kong has always been my dream. The teachers there had contacted me long ago. After consideration, I think the University of Hong Kong is more suitable for me." James' mother was silent for a long time. I thought she would be angry because I had changed my application without telling her, and that she would be disappointed in me. But James' mother just patted me on the shoulder and said, "Ava has finally grown up and knows how to think for herself." After my parents died, I was taken to live in James' family. Living under someone else's roof made me unconsciously try to please the people in James' family. I was like this with the elders and James' family, and even more so with James. Everyone knew that I listened to James the most. When we were kids, he got angry because I talked to other boys at school and pushed me out of the door. He shouted at me, "Don't come back to my house." So I stood outside the villa all night. I expected that I would encounter misfortune in the well-guarded villa area. I still can't forget how the man, reeking of alcohol, covered my mouth and dragged me into the bushes, how he beat me and roughly took off my clothes. After that incident, I knew I couldn't go against James. I didn't want to experience that kind of helplessness and despair in the dark again. So I was even more cautious around him. This caution gradually distorted and deformed over the next 5 years, turning into my unconditional flattery and obedience to James. As a friend put it, "You work like a beast of burden for James. Even the nanny in his house isn't as attentive as you." When filling out the college application during the college entrance examination, James said, "What should we do, Ava? Your scores are so high. Are we going to be separated?" His words, "I don't want to be separated from you, you made me misunderstand." I took it as an euphemistic confession. So I cooperated with him and applied to a university in being. But on the night of the coming-of-age ceremony, when Olivia confessed to him, James glanced at me standing beside him, raised his eyebrows, and accepted the confession. A friend who knew the inside story felt indignant for me and asked him, "What about Ava?" The scene suddenly fell silent. James looked at me and said indifferently, "What can be done?" He said, "Ava and I will always be the best of friends." It was also that night that I suddenly figured it out. I didn't want to stay in being anymore, nor did I want to be the best friend in James' mouth. So that night I secretly changed my application and applied to the University of Hong Kong, which was the farthest from being. "Andy supports you going to study at the University of Hong Kong," James' mother said to me with a smile. With her support, that heavy burden that had been weighing on my heart for days finally dissipated. I sniffed. Finally I asked her, "Auntie, could you please not tell James that I'm going to study at the University of Hong Kong for now?" James' mother understood my concerns. "James has a wild temper. I know you're afraid that if he finds out, it'll cause an unpleasant scene for everyone. But Ava, he'll find out sooner or later that you're leaving." After getting the admission notice, I started to prepare for going to study in Hong Kong. While packing, I found a photo of James and me, taken a long time ago. In the photo, I was pushed in front of the camera by James, smiling reluctantly and shyly. I stared at the photo in a daze, not noticing that someone had entered my room, nor the hand that suddenly reached out from behind. It was only when Olivia snatched the photo frame that I came to my senses. "Is this a photo of you and James?" Olivia didn't hide her mockery of me at all. "Ava, you haven't changed much since you were a kid. You're still so ugly." She mouthed the last sentence. Although it was silent, it was deafening. I suppressed the feelings of shame and anger in my heart and said in a deep voice, "Didn't anyone in your family teach you that you can't enter someone else's room casually?" When I was about to reach out to take back the photo frame, I turned my head and saw James standing at the door of my room. He frowned and looked at Olivia, saying with some displeasure, "What are you doing in Ava's room? Come out." He paused, then came in directly and pulled Olivia out. Ava doesn't like others entering her room. James' movements were quite forceful, and Olivia stumbled 2 steps. After she steadied herself, she glanced at me and smiled. "It was Ava who asked me to come into her room to see your old photos. James, you and Ava have such a good relationship." As she spoke, she handed the photo frame to James. I had to admire Olivia's ability to tell blatant lies. "Olivia, did I ask you to come in?" "Ava, don't misunderstand. I'm not jealous of your good relationship with James. I just..." Before she could finish her words, James interrupted her. "You go to my room and wait for me first." Then James entered my room and slammed the door shut. He blamed me. "You shouldn't have shown our photo to Olivia." I was eager to explain myself. I was packing in the room. She came in on her own. I never thought of showing her our photo. But James didn't believe me. He said to himself, "Olivia is my girlfriend now. And you and I are friends. We'll only ever be friends. Ava, don't do stupid things." He casually threw the photo frame on the table. "If you like this photo, put it away. Don't let her see it again." "Ava, I don't want Olivia to be sad because of this photo. Nor do I want her to misunderstand the relationship between you and me." These words made me laugh inappropriately. I knew it was useless to explain, so I just picked up the photo frame, took out the photo, and tore it up in front of James. "Is that okay?" James looked at the pieces in the trash can and was stunned for a moment. His brows knitted even tighter. "Ava, don't make trouble." "I'm not making trouble," I looked up at James and said calmly. "If you think this photo embarrasses you, then I'll destroy it in front of you so you don't have to worry about it being seen by others anymore." Outside the door, Olivia was pounding on the door anxiously. "James, don't be angry with Ava because of me." She was making a big scene, as if she wanted the whole world to know that James and I had fallen out because of her. Even James' mother came upstairs and asked James, "What are you doing in Ava's room?" Suddenly, an unnamed anger welled up in my heart. But I didn't know how to vent it. I could only walk to the door and open it. As soon as Olivia saw me, she started apologizing frantically. "Ava, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have." Before she could finish, James interrupted her again. "What are you apologizing to her for?" After saying that, James pushed past me and dragged Olivia back to the adjacent room. Not wanting to worry James' mother, I casually came up with an excuse to perfunctorily deal with Auntie. "The school leader asked me to go to school today. I'm leaving now." It was only when I got into the taxi going to school that I noticed a cut on my finger. Probably when I was taking out the photo, I accidentally got cut by the glass of the photo frame. Thinking of the photo that I had already torn to pieces, I belatedly felt a sense of pity. That group photo was a birthday gift that James begged me for on his birthday. "I'm not as ugly as Olivia said. But I'm really just ordinary looking." My lack of confidence in my appearance made me extremely resistant to the camera. And I was even more afraid of taking photos with others. Coincidentally, James' mother gave birth to James, who is incredibly good-looking. That almost perfect face is enough to make every girl's heart flutter. Shallow as I am, I was no exception. But the first time I found him so dazzling, as if he was glowing, was when I was cornered and bullied by the girls in the class in the toilet. James suddenly burst in. He pulled me out of the dark and damp toilet and led me into the sunlight. From then on, I always saw him with a kind of filter. When I arrived at school, the director was still in a meeting. It was William who took me to the office to wait for her. Regarding this academic god, who is surrounded by admirers, my only impressions of him are he always ranks first in the science department in the grade, and is very popular among the girls in the school. "The director will be a while," William only said this to me and then left. When he came back, he had 2 bottles of mineral water in his hand. One was placed in front of me. Along with the mineral water were a Band-Aid and a pack of iodine-soaked cotton swabs. "Your finger is bleeding," William reminded me. It was the ring finger of my right hand that was injured. While I was carefully treating the wound, William leaned against the desk and stared intently at my actions. When the director came in, I had just finished putting on the Band-Aid. William naturally took away the trash in front of me. He handed the other bottle of mineral water to the director. The director took it and took 2 sips, then started complaining about the content of the meeting just now. Finally, she said, "Get to know each other. This is Ava, the top scorer in liberal arts in our grade." She pointed at me, then she pointed at William. "And this is William, the top scorer in science." What a coincidence! Both the top scorers in liberal arts and science have applied to the University of Hong Kong. The director briefly stated the purpose of asking us to come today. "William, this afternoon you take Ava to handle some of the documents and materials for studying in Hong Kong." When we were about to leave, the director asked me to stay alone. She said, "Do you know that the teacher was angry with you before?" I was stunned for a moment and soon thought of the subject choosing incident before. During the subject choosing period, I was on sick leave. When I returned to school, I found out that I was assigned to the liberal arts class. I asked James, "Did you fill in the liberal arts for me on the class choosing volunteer form?" "Yeah," James said with a comic expression. "I told you I chose liberal arts." That was the first time I spoke to James in an almost roaring manner. "Why did you fill in the liberal arts for me without asking? You didn't even tell me about the school class choosing thing. Does liberal arts or science matter?" James remained calm. "Ava, I thought that if I chose liberal arts, you would definitely choose liberal arts with me." After that quarrel, James locked himself in his room. He used means like going on a hunger strike and refusing to go to school to win. For someone living under someone else's roof, there's no need for others to say anything. Just a sigh from James' father and a helpless look from James' mother were enough for me to choose to compromise. But now I don't want to compromise anymore. That's why I asked James' mother to keep it a secret from James that I changed my volunteer before leaving. I don't want any accidents to happen because of him. The director said, "At that time I persuaded you to transfer to the science class and you clearly agreed to me. But the next day you told me you wouldn't transfer." "I'm sorry, director," I lowered my head feeling extremely ashamed. "Ava, you don't need to feel sorry for me. I'm just sorry that you gave up physics and the competitions because of this." The director sighed and stopped dwelling on the past. She patted me on the shoulder. "Fortunately, you didn't make a mistake this time with the volunteer. William is half from Hong Kong. If you run into any trouble there, just ask him." I didn't expect that as soon as I came out of the office, I ran into Olivia and James head-on. James ignored me and glanced at William standing beside me. He didn't say anything, but Olivia teased in an ambiguous tone, "No wonder Ava didn't come to school with us, so you had an appointment." I ignored her words and was about to leave with William, but James suddenly called out to me, "I want to eat the wontons in the south of the city at noon. I can't find the way. You take me and Olivia there." Olivia stuck out her tongue playfully. "Actually, it's me who wants to eat them." I suppressed my disgust and gently refused. "I have something to do. You can navigate there by yourselves." "What's so important?" James stared at me with an impatient expression. His eyes swept over William again, and then he suddenly laughed. "Ava, what could be more important than me? Before, when I said I wanted to eat the wontons in the south of the city, you could go buy them for me alone in the heavy snow." After James finished speaking, William beside him looked at his watch. He said considerately, "Ava, if you have something to do, we can make an appointment another day." "It's okay, wait for me a moment." I smiled apologetically at William. Then I lowered my head to unlock my phone and sent the location to James. "I've sent you the location. You can follow the navigation. You two are a couple, it's not appropriate for me to go with you." Olivia suddenly interrupted me. "Ava, are you afraid that we'll find out about that thing?" Her unexpected words left me confused. "What do you mean?" I frowned and stared at Olivia. Olivia smiled meaningfully. She glanced at William and continued, "It's about when you were almost raped when you were a kid. Fortunately, the security guard saved you." The security guard opened a wonton. Here is the content with punctuation added, and each sentence is broken into separate lines. "Shop after he retired. Are you afraid that we'll find out about this? So you don't want to go with us? It's okay, Ava. You're the victim, we won't look at you in a strange way. Instantly, a chill spread from my heart. I stood there, stunned. It took me a long time to turn my head in disbelief. And look at James. Did you tell her? James knitted his brows and dared not look at me. Ava, you don't need to feel inferior. Olivia's insincerity was obvious on the surface. Yet there were always people who seemed not to notice. I lowered my head, pinched my palm, and tried my best to suppress the surging emotions in my heart. I didn't want to question James in front of others. Why he told Olivia about this matter. Nor did I want to reveal more details and become their topic of conversation. When I turned to leave, I heard Olivia ask James, "Did I say something wrong?" James' voice was cold as he simply said, "Leave her alone." But in the end, James didn't take Olivia to the south of the city to eat the wontons they were longing for. The south of the city is quite far from James's home. If they had gone, James couldn't have gotten home earlier than me. You were out with William for 2.5 hours. What did you do in these 2.5 hours? James demanded as soon as he saw me. I didn't want to answer his question, but James clearly showed no sign of giving up. He stood in front of me and repeated the question. What did you do? I suddenly thought he was really despicable. After making sure there was no one else in the house except him and me, I said softly, "James, why did you tell Olivia about what happened to me when I was a kid?" First, he briefly avoided my scrutinizing gaze, but soon regained his confidence. "Don't change the subject. What did you do with William this afternoon?" I suddenly felt exhausted. "James, when you go out with Olivia, I never ask what you do together." Probably because he was used to my submissiveness to him, James couldn't stand even a little bit of my resistance. He sneered and said sarcastically, "Do you think your relationship with William is the same as mine with Olivia?" As he spoke, he suddenly stopped smiling, bent slightly, and stared at me in an extremely oppressive manner. He asked me, "Because I'm with Olivia, so you're going to be with William? Are you chasing him?" When James was angry, his emotions were erratic, and his words were like knives stabbing at people's hearts. "What a pity. Ava, William doesn't like your type." He laughed extremely maliciously. "Do you think William will still talk to you if he knows what happened to you when you were a kid?" Perhaps realizing he had said the wrong thing, James quickly added, "Do you know that Olivia chased William? He didn't even fancy Olivia. Do you think he can fancy you? Wake up, Ava." For some reason, I thought of the conversation I overheard him having with his friend the other day. James' acceptance of Olivia's confession at the coming-of-age ceremony took everyone by surprise. After all, our mutual friends had always assumed that James and I were a couple. I also always thought I was a special existence in his heart. James had a cleanliness obsession, yet he could eat the leftovers of food and rice in my bowl. In the second year of high school, when it was popular for girls in the class to knit scarves for their crushes, James knitted one for me too. I was frail and often sick, so he carried me up Nanan Mountain to pray for blessings, asking the Bodhis Suba to keep me healthy. Even the night before his coming-of-age ceremony, James got drunk at a gathering organized by his friends. On the way back home, when I was taking him, I looked up and saw a full moon in the sky, and James lowered his head and kissed me on the lips. It was a fleeting kiss, a mere touch. My heart raced like crazy, and I couldn't sleep all night. My mind was full of the sound of him holding me and repeatedly calling my name. Ava. I couldn't figure out why James gave me the illusion that he liked me. Yet he accepted Olivia's confession right in front of me. Until one day, I overheard his friend asking him, "Ava is so good to you. We all thought you two would definitely be together. Why did you suddenly accept Olivia's confession?" That night, James had been drinking and his tone was a bit slurred. He said bluntly, "I've had my fun with her. I think she's rather boring. Being friends is enough. I have someone else in mind for a romantic relationship." His brother didn't quite understand. So James continued, "Do you like apples? Ava is like an apple. She's good in every way, but she's just too ordinary. When she stands with Olivia, the contrast is too obvious. In that situation, any man would choose Olivia, right? Olivia was extremely good-looking and had a great figure. She was the recognized school beauty. With the noise around me, I turned to look at myself in the mirror. And I had never been so disappointed with this face. James looked at me, who was in a daze, and said again, "Ava, wake up." I didn't say anything. I just silently raised my hand and slapped him across the face. "Are you crazy?" James looked at me in disbelief. "Ava, William doesn't fancy you. Why are you throwing a tantrum at me?" He didn't even know why I was angry. After that, James and I had a cold war for a long, long time. During the 5 years I was fostered in James' home, James and I had several conflicts. I was afraid of awkward situations. And I was even more afraid that Uncle and Aunt would notice the tension between James and me. Usually, within less than a day, I would take the initiative to find James to compromise and make peace. James thought this time would be the same as before. That I would be afraid and take the initiative to apologize to him. He waited day after day, week after week. But I didn't respond at all. Until it was close to the start of college. James took the initiative to talk to me for the first time after our Cold War. "Ava, I think I have a fever." He took my hand to touch his forehead. I shook him off. "Take medicine if you're sick." When I was about to get up and go back to my room, James suddenly grabbed me. "Are you going to ignore me like this forever, Ava? You're so heartless. Before, when I was sick, you cared about me more than my mom. Why are you just telling me to take medicine now?" James was good at hitting someone and then giving them a sweet date. Seeing that I still ignored him, he said, "What I said that day was out of anger. I just didn't want you to be deceived by William. You usually only focus on studying. So you don't know how many girls in school are chasing William. He never gives any girl a proper title, he's a playboy. Besides, everyone knows that William has applied to the University of Hong Kong. And you were supposed to go to see the university with me. Even if you really managed to win him over. Are you going to have a long-distance relationship in the future?" Here is the text with punctuation added and broken into separate sentences. After saying that, James suddenly seemed to think of something impossible. He said firmly, "Ava, a person like William won't agree to be with you. He just thinks you're simple and easy to deceive. And he's just playing with you. I know you're angry with me because of Olivia. Ava, even if I'm with Olivia, you'll always be my best friend." I interrupted him coldly. "I don't want to be friends with you, James. I'm not that magnanimous. I can't be friends with someone I've kissed and been intimate with." As soon as I said these words, James seemed to be rooted to the spot. He looked at me, his lips moving slightly. This was the first time I laid myself bare and faced James honestly. Doubt. I have to admit that at this moment, there was still a glimmer of expectation in my heart. But this expectation was like the setting sun outside the window. When the last ray of afterglow disappeared completely, I suddenly let out a sigh of relief. Then, I turned around and walked towards the stairs. After returning to my room, I organized the documents and materials for studying in Hong Kong. It was only when I realized that I had left my phone downstairs that I came out of the room. Just as I was about to go downstairs, I saw James standing there with my phone. Hearing the sound of the door opening, James also looked up at me. His expression was strange, and his tone when talking to me was almost gritted teeth. "School starts at C University on the 1st. What are you going to Hong Kong for that day?" I wasn't sure if it was because I was angry at his act of checking my phone without permission, or if I was afraid that he would find out I had changed my college application. My heart skipped a beat. I ran a few steps to get my phone back. But James easily dodged. We both knew each other's phone unlock passwords. At this moment, my phone screen was on the flight ticket information interface. James glanced at the phone screen and asked me again, "What are you going to Hong Kong for that day?" I pursed my lips tightly and remained silent. Then, I heard James continue, "Don't tell me you're going to see William off." This sentence made my nervous heart finally calm down a bit. "No," I said. Just as I finished speaking, the message reminder on my phone suddenly rang. The dimmed screen lit up again. It was a message from William. "You left something in the car. I'll bring it to you now." Attached was a photo of the small plush toy that I always hung on my bag. The expression on James's face, which had just softened a bit, visibly turned irritable. "You went out with him this afternoon." "It's none of your business," I replied. I reached out to grab the phone. "Give me my phone back," but he dodged again easily. James looked at me and suddenly let out a cold laugh. He replied to William in front of me. Okay, then, he said mockingly. If you don't tell me, I'll ask him in person. He was always like this. Paranoid and overbearing. I was both anxious and angry. But there was a huge disparity in strength. Until the doorbell rang. James gave me a sarcastic glance and went to open the door. It was Olivia. Why didn't you answer my call? Did you forget about the class reunion tonight? She turned her eyes and saw me. Then smiled and said, Ava, come with us too. I'm introverted and not enthusiastic about such group activities. Olivia seemed to know that I would refuse. She shook James's arm gently and said to him, James, let Ava come with us. James put his arm around her, looked up at me, and ordered, Come along. I'll give you back your phone when you get in the car. After saying that, he led Olivia outside. Helplessly. I could only follow. Seeing me get in the car, James smiled triumphantly and threw the phone to me as if giving arms. The previous message couldn't be withdrawn. I could only edit a message to explain. I had something urgent and went out. I'll come to get it from you tomorrow. I waited for a long time. But William didn't reply. Ava, stop playing with your phone, Olivia's voice suddenly sounded in my ear. Come and play games with us. She and several girls who were on good terms were playing Truth or Dare. I refused immediately. Olivia suddenly bumped into the glass in front of me. Even though I reacted quickly and tried to avoid it, the hem of my dress still got dirty. Sorry, Ava. I'm so clumsy, Olivia apologized. But the smile on her face was particularly deliberate, with a hint of provocation. Although I felt something was strange in my heart, I still didn't say anything. I just got up silently and left the private room. When I was cleaning the hem of my dress in the restroom, I accidentally heard someone mention my name. Who can't tell that Ava likes you? She bought a plane ticket to Hong Kong and deliberately let you see it. Most likely she just wants to use William to stimulate you. The person speaking was James's good friend. James had been restless all night. And at this moment, he seemed to be suddenly convinced and let out a sigh of relief. He stood against the wall. And under the warm yellow light, his features were handsome and three-dimensional. Her little tricks are really boring, he muttered. The person next to him teased. After all, she likes you. James sneered. There are so many people who like me. I lowered my eyes, pretending not to hear, and slowly rubbed the stains on the hem of my dress. After coming out of the restroom, I saw the message from William. My phone had run out of battery and turned off. I just charged it. Are you at Hing Sheen? I heard your class is having a reunion there tonight. Wait for me. I'll be there soon. The message was sent 10 minutes ago. I replied to him. Okay, I'll wait for you at the entrance. After sending the message, I looked up and saw Olivia walking toward me with a big smile. Ava, she called my name affectionately and sat down beside me as if we were very familiar. What did you feel when you saw James and me kissing in the car before? Olivia looked at me with a smile. Seeing that I didn't speak, she giggled twice. Everyone knows you like James. Unfortunately, James doesn't like ugly girls. He said he would have nightmares if he kissed an ugly girl. If it was before, I think I would have been sad and angry because of Olivia's words. But now I just looked at her calmly and said, Is that so, Olivia? Since you and James got together, I haven't done anything to undermine your relationship. So you don't need to target me on purpose again and again. Besides, I don't like him anymore. As soon as I finished speaking, I saw William arrive. I got up and walked over. William took out the small plush toy from his pocket and handed it to me. It seems very important to you. So I wanted to bring it to you as soon as possible, he said. I took it and thanked him softly. This small plush toy was given to me by James a long time ago. Inside the toy, there was a piece of amulet that he had prayed for me personally. I've carried it with me all these years and never left it. It looks so old. Olivia came over again without me noticing. Noticing that she was holding juice in her hand, I became vigilant immediately. However, the next second, the juice was splashed toward me. Fortunately, William beside me was quick-witted and pulled me away. But the originally pink-white plush toy was now dyed orange-yellow by the juice, and was dripping wet. I stood there stunned. William frowned and glared at Olivia, saying coldly, "If you can't hold things properly, go to the hospital and get your hands amputated as soon as possible." Then he took a tissue to wipe my hands. The plush toy could only be taken to be cleaned. Here is the text with punctuation added and broken into separate sentences. I looked at the ruined small plush toy in my hand and didn't say anything. Olivia apologized to me again as she did before. "Ava, I'm really so careless." She had been careless too many times. I looked up at her and suddenly smiled gracefully, accepting her apology. "It doesn't matter." After that, I walked to the front desk, took a whole pot of orange juice, and poured it directly on Olivia. "Sorry, I was careless too, Olivia. You won't be angry, right?" I've always had a good temper. Olivia didn't expect me to retaliate so simply and rudely. She was stunned for a long time before she started screaming and crying. More and more people were attracted by her. Seeing James, Olivia cried and complained to him. "It's Ava and William. How could Ava bully me with someone from another class?" James only glanced at her, then fixed his eyes on me and William. "Apologize." His voice was extremely cold, and his eyes were full of anger. But both William and I ignored him as if he didn't exist. William asked the waiter for a clean towel. "Give me the plush toy, I'll wipe it first." I shook my head. "No need, it's not something important." After that, in front of everyone, I threw the plush toy into the trash can next to me. "Sorry to make you come all the way here." William smiled indifferently. "Because it's yours, that's why I brought it here." At that time, I didn't think deeply about the meaning of this sentence. After being ignored, James became even more furious. "Ava, if you don't apologize, don't go home." This was the second time I heard him say this. When he grew up, James perhaps noticed that I was sensitive. So he never threatened me with not allowing me to go home again. At this moment, for Olivia, he could completely ignore my feelings. But it didn't matter anyway. I would be leaving for Hong Kong soon. I glanced at James, then turned my eyes to Olivia. Then, I twitched the corners of my mouth, imitating the way Olivia apologized to me, and smiled. "Sorry, Olivia, I didn't mean it." "You clearly did," Olivia retorted sharply. "But who cares about her?" I asked James. "I've apologized, can I go now?" James didn't say anything. So I took it as his acquiescence. When I was about to leave, William suddenly grabbed me. "Wait for me." After that, he went to the front desk and took another glass of juice. Under everyone's gaze, he poured it at Olivia's feet. "Sorry, I was careless." He left his phone number. "Contact me if you need compensation." I knew he did this to share some of the pressure for me. James couldn't watch Olivia being bullied. He clenched his fist and punched at William. But William easily dodged. William put his hands in his trouser pockets and said to him calmly, "Drink less green tea." Then he left with me. On the way to send me home, I said to William, "I'm going to change my ticket and go to Hong Kong earlier." William didn't ask me why. Just said, "Okay, I'll go with you." He asked again, "Which day do you want to go?" I looked at the neon lights outside the window, carefully observing the city where I grew up. I replied to him, "Tomorrow." Strangely, after we left, no one cared about Olivia's embarrassment. Everyone was gossiping about me and William. Are they together? William was just helping Ava, right? I heard that they were often seen dating during the summer vacation. So sweet! These words made James's face turn darker and darker. His friend beside him quickly said, "What are you talking about?" Ava applied to C University. And William is going to the University of Hong Kong. How could they be together? A classmate refuted him. Long-distance relationships aren't illegal. His friend argued with others, getting red in the face. "That's impossible." Suddenly, a girl said, "Don't you guys know that Ava applied to the University of Hong Kong?" Instantly, everyone at the scene fell silent. The first one to react was James. Associating Ava's recent abnormal behavior. His heart tightened and he immediately rushed over and grabbed the girl. "Who told you that Ava applied to the University of Hong Kong?" The girl stammered for a long time and finally admitted that she was lying. She was frightened by James's expression, but still stood up for Ava. "You clearly know that Ava wants to apply to the University of Hong Kong. But you forced her to stay in Beijing with you." Olivia has bullied her so many times. Didn't you see it? After confirming that the news of Ava going to Hong Kong was false, James let out a sigh of relief. He didn't hear the last two sentences the girl said. A class reunion ended in a farce, leaving only a few people in their usual small circle. James opened a new private room. He leaned against the back of the sofa cushion, and his eyes somehow landed on the fruit platter on the table. Most of the fruits in the platter had been eaten, leaving only a piece of apple all alone. James suddenly thought of Ava. He had thought more than once that Ava was like an apple. Rigid, ordinary, and boring. As he thought about it, he remembered the way Ava and William stood together just now. Suddenly, an unnamed anger welled up in his heart. Just then, Olivia, who had changed her clothes, came in. As soon as she entered, she noticed that James's expression was off. Olivia sat down beside James and naturally nestled into his arms. She thought James was still angry because Ava had bullied her. So she comforted him softly. Don't be angry. Maybe Ava has some misunderstandings about me. Seeing that James was still staring at the fruit plate without speaking, Olivia asked the waiter to bring in another fruit plate. She held a sugar apple to James's mouth, but he dodged it. She watched as James reached out and took the uneaten piece of apple. Olivia cautiously said, "What's so delicious about an apple? Do you not like apples either?" This sudden and unexpected question from James didn't make her feel anything was wrong. Olivia just casually replied, "Who would like apples?" James didn't say anything more. He was silent for a long time, and no one knew what he was thinking until Olivia ran out of the private room crying. The others stopped what they were doing and asked James, "What happened to her?" James still half lay on the sofa in the previous position, half of his face hidden in the darkness. But his side profile seemed even sharper. "We broke up." His friends were all surprised and came over to get to the bottom of it. "Weren't you two doing well? Why did you suddenly break up?" James just shrugged. In fact, he himself didn't know why he suddenly broke up with her just now. But at this moment, he didn't feel the slightest bit of sadness. He even thought, if I told Ava that I and Olivia had broken up, Ava would probably be very happy, right? Thinking of this, he smiled inexplicably, and suddenly really wanted to see Ava. But he had made an agreement with his friends to party all night. He thought he would tell Ava tomorrow. When he returned to the villa, James's mother was just at home. "I told her about my plan to go to Hong Kong in advance." James's mother didn't say much, but just helped me pack my luggage before boarding the plane. James's mother stuffed a card into my hand. "Take good care of yourself in Hong Kong. Auntie knows that James has bullied you." She suddenly choked up, and tears welled up instantly. "Ava, I'm so sorry to you." I hurriedly comforted her. "Auntie, you didn't do anything wrong. I've always been grateful to you." When she took me to James's home, James's mother said she would treat me like her own daughter in the future. In the past few years at James's home, she really did. If it weren't for the issues between me and James, I think we might have become a real mother-daughter pair. On the night I landed in Hong Kong, I received a call from James. I didn't answer, and he called several times in a row. In the end, I had to block his number. Soon, he sent a WeChat message. "Where are you?" I briefly explained the matter of changing my college application. After that, James sent out a string of messages. I neither read them nor replied. I unpinned him, then set his messages to Do Not Disturb. After thinking for a while, I chose to directly delete him as a friend. But I underestimated James's paranoia. On the day when University started, James's mother called to say that James was missing. Before she could finish speaking, I looked up and saw a familiar figure standing at the school gate of the University of Hong Kong. When James rushed towards me, William pulled me behind him. James still tried to reach out and pull me, but William slapped his hand away. William said impatiently, "Buddy, be civilized, just talk. Don't get physical." The anger that James had pent up for a long time finally erupted at this moment. He grabbed William's collar and said in a rough tone, "What does my business with her have to do with you?" Seeing that the two were on the verge of a fight, here is the text with punctuation added and sentences broken into separate lines as requested. I promptly spoke up to stop them. "Stop it, James. Today is the start of C University. You suddenly disappeared and turned off your phone. Everyone is looking for you. James's mother is also very worried about you. James stared at me for a long time before saying, "You suddenly disappeared and didn't answer my calls. Have you ever thought about how I felt at that time, Ava?" He let go of William and, contrary to his usual self, calmed down. "Ava, why did you lie to me?" He emphasized the word lie very strongly. I took a deep breath and said softly, "If I didn't do this, you would have found 10,000 ways to make me stay in Beijing." James twitched the corners of his mouth. "Ava, don't make me sound so despicable." I said, "But that's exactly what you did before. You were like this when you made me break up with my male friends. And also when it came to class division." James seemed to be recollecting these things had really happened. And he suddenly realized something. After a moment of silence, James said, "I just didn't want to be separated from you." He always liked to use this reason as an excuse for not respecting me and controlling me. I smiled. "But there are better solutions, James. You can't keep bullying me and always make me compromise." I saw his eyes suddenly turn red. James knew why I had changed my college application without telling him. And he also knew why I left Beijing without a word. But he was used to self-deception and blaming others for his mistakes. He suddenly pointed at William and asked me, "Ava, do you like him? Otherwise, why did you come to the University of Hong Kong with him?" I knew it was pointless to say more. I just advised him one last time. "Go back to China. James's mother has asked for leave for you from the school. It's still not too late to go back now." When I entered the school, James chased after me relentlessly. He was not reconciled. "Only if you go back with me." But he was stopped outside the school gate by the security guard. "Sir, non-students need to make an appointment to visit the school." After that, James blocked me outside the school for several days. Until James's father and mother came to Hong Kong together and took him back. During the winter vacation of my freshman year, I applied to stay on campus. James's mother didn't say anything when she knew about it. She knew why I didn't want to go back to Beijing. Before the Spring Festival, I used the money I earned from part-time jobs to buy some special local products in Hong Kong and mailed them to Beijing. After receiving the express delivery, James's mother called me. Towards the end of the conversation, she said that James didn't go to CCU University. He said he would repeat the senior year of high school and take the college entrance examination to come to the University of Hong Kong to find you. His father and I couldn't persuade him, so we had no choice but to let him do it. James's mother said, "During the Spring Festival, your roommates will all go home. You'll be so lonely alone." I smiled. "I have a friend who is a local in Hong Kong. He invited me to his home for the Spring Festival." "Is it William?" "I've heard of him." "Yeah." Afraid that she would worry, I lied. William did invite me to his home for the Spring Festival, but I refused. Fortunately, there are restaurants open in Hong Kong on New Year's Eve. After dinner, William called to ask if I was available. It was noisy on William's side, and I didn't hear what he said. After a while, it became quiet over there. "Sorry, there are kids at home. It's too noisy." I smiled and said, "It's okay. I didn't hear what you said just now." He said, "Do you want to go to Victoria Harbour to watch the fireworks? Don't you need to accompany your family?" William also seemed to be smiling. "They don't need me." My first New Year in Hong Kong was spent with William. As the New Year's countdown bell rang and fireworks filled the sky, William lowered his head and said to me, "Ava, Happy New Year." I replied to him, "William, Happy New Year." Here, I saw James again in the summer of the next year. I heard that he failed the college entrance examination, and James's father was already planning to send him abroad. Before leaving, he came to Hong Kong to look for me. Once. It had only been a year since we last met, and I almost didn't recognize him. James had lost a lot of weight, and his eyes no longer had the previous unrestrained look. He had become completely different from the James in my memory. We met at a private restaurant. The surrounding environment was quiet, which made the silence between him and me seem less awkward. When the steamed egg was served, James moved the dish in front of me. "You've liked steamed eggs since you were a kid." He scooped a spoonful with a spoon and put it in my bowl. Seeing that I didn't move, he asked, Why don't you eat? I smiled and said, I don't like it anymore. This sentence made the air that had just started to flow freeze again. After a long time. So long that the dishes on the table had lost their warmth. James spoke again. He said, I broke up with Olivia. I know. James was a bit surprised. He smiled bitterly and murmured, So you knew? Do you know that the person I've always liked is you? James's sudden confession only made me stunned for a moment. And soon I returned to normal, pretending not to hear. I knew that he liked me. James liked me. But he was not willing to like someone as ordinary as me. So, when others said that we were a perfect match since childhood, James always refuted them, emphasizing again and again that he only regarded me as a younger sister. I also know that on the day of his coming-of-age ceremony, he knew I was going to confess my love to him. So he agreed to be with Olivia right in front of me. He told his brother that he didn't want to lose me as a good friend. Ava, is there no way for us to go back to how we used to be? I didn't answer James's question because just then, William sent me a message. I bought the cool and nourishing dessert you like. Attached was a photo of the cool and nourishing dessert he took. William knew that I was coming to see James today. And right now he was waiting for me outside. Suddenly, I didn't want him to wait any longer. I wanted to see him immediately and eat the cool and nourishing dessert he bought for me right away. James, if there's nothing else, I'll be leaving now. James glanced at my phone and asked me, Is it William? I nodded. And after thinking for a moment, I added, He's my boyfriend now. As I was leaving, James asked me, Why do you like William? Almost instinctively, I thought of that time when I asked William, Do you like apples? If you like apples too, I'd be willing to share half of mine with you. William replied without hesitation, I like them. He said, Apples are the king of fruits. They are nutritionally rich and they are accessible. Apples are the greatest fruits in the world.